Hi, and welcome to another Risk Right video where we will be discussing the importance of systems thinking to risk. My name's Tony Nelson. Our meta model video gives you an overview of our unique method that simplifies risk and which provides the foundation for our resources and AI app. All our resources aim to demystify risk because we know how much of an important skill it is for the future. It enables you to think ahead and be proactive instead of being hit by nasty surprises. Systems thinking is important because it helps us identify cause and effect. Now, this is going to be a high-level run-through of some of the key concepts. For more in-depth understanding, you can sign up for one of our seminars. This is a list of some of the key concepts and authors. There are others out there which I studied when doing a master's in systems thinking, specializing in cybernetics. Now, quick note on cybernetics. It's about how individual behaviors are reflected within groups of people and organizations, about how our collective behavior mirrors that of an individual. It's useful because risk management within organizations is about collective behavior. Now, let's take a quick scamper through some of these concepts. Here we have a very simple system. It's the heating system in your house. It shows how the boiler heats the water, the flow rate of the pump increases to push that hot water into the radiators. As the room heats, the thermostatic reading increases until it tells the boiler to shut off, or reverses that if the thermostatic reading drops below a certain temperature, it tells the boiler to turn on. It's a balancing system, and it's called balancing with a B in the middle because it self-corrects. And this is an example of a feedback loop. If there was no thermostat or is broken, the boiler would continue heating until there was a steam explosion. And this is what that looks like in the days before we had things like thermostats and safety valves. This is a steam locomotive from 1948. Back to our system. Mapping a system like this helps us understand the components of it, their relationships, and where we could intervene, or a leverage point. An example we have introduced is thermostats in our home heating systems as a safety measure. We could also have other safety interventions, such as turning off the boiler if the thermostat did not provide a signal because it was faulty. And this would be called a failsafe or an interlock. Now, let's look at a more complex example. This is risk management done as a system diagram overlaid onto a project. Now, when we consider risk, it's about our ability to identify potential problems, work out how big they are, and plan to avoid them happening. This then helps other downstream things like knowledge management, learning, productivity, and retaining good people by avoiding burning them out. If you wanted to make the most impact with an intervention, you would do so by establishing good processes and coaching them out to your team, which is why this features at the top in this particular case. Note how there are no balancing loops in this model. They're all reinforcing, hence the R. Get risk management right and productivity will continue to improve. Get it wrong and productivity will continue to decrease. And this is known as the death spiral, which could be considered as a particular system archetype. No one wants to stay on a sinking ship, and if things continue to worsen, the best people leave or they simply burn out. Now, here's an example of a systems diagram I developed to understand how a client's engineering delivery could be improved. This was developed gradually after speaking with stakeholders individually and as groups and reading their business plans. Managing engagements like this allowed me to capture and validate perspectives and mental models, more key systems thinking concepts. It allowed causal loops to emerge, and there are other systems thinking concepts present too. Furthermore, we can start to identify boundaries. If there isn't an in arrow, well, that suggests it's on the edge of the system and is therefore on the boundary. And if we look to the bottom left, we see an example of interfacing programs. What I like about developing diagrams and pictures like this is that they can either start as rich pictures by capturing opinions and perspectives, and then they can be made more factual into systems diagrams, or the other way around. Building this allows us to identify the whole picture from everybody's point of view and reveal any hidden complexity, to take an holistic view, otherwise known as holism. It allowed me to communicate between stakeholders to help them understand that running a program was not down to one or two things. Everything mattered, and we could see how it mattered. and that would be the principle of emergence. And if someone had very fixed views about priorities, we could challenge them gently to help manage their dogmatism. Most importantly, once people's detailed views, shown here in blue, were overlaid, I had identified and almost defined most of my risks. From this example, we could prioritize either from the most comments, the biggest cluster of blue comments, or the biggest cluster of arrows would suggest that that is a priority node for us to focus on for any intervention. In this particular case, we focused on one of the nodes, requirements management, where that was so important because there were more arrows going in and out than anywhere else, and we understood the need to bring our suppliers closer in on our requirements management so they could deliver those requirements more accurately and more quickly. In summary, there's a lot of different systems thinking concepts out there, and it can be quite intimidating to start with, but they all overlap and they all interrelate. There are some key concepts that are really useful for risk analysis, like we've discussed. And they all come into play when we do something as simple as a systems diagram or rich picture, but it's really helpful to be conscious of the concepts that you're using and how they help, because it just helps you focus your work more directly. Now, these diagrams help us identify risks and prioritize interventions as well, which in this particular case was the whole point of doing them. Well, thank you very much for your time and attention. If you want to reach out about anything, any feedback, or looking deeper into any of these ideas, then you can email us or contact us through our website. Thank you very much.